B5, the R&B boy group that could have been global sensations and household names. Brothers Dustin, Kelly, Patrick, Carnell, and Brian made up the early 2000s quintet and took off quickly. Signing to Diddy's label Bad Boy at nearly the top of the millennium, their breakout remake of All I Do in 2005 introduced them to audiences. From singing on top of school buses to 106 in Park, they charmed young girls across the country with their pretty boy vibe and energetic dance moves.
Teenage girls charge a stage to get closer to the band B5.
Their brand and marketability even caught the attention of Disney, and they built a brief media partnership. From High School Musical soundtracks to Hannah Montana soundtracks, and touring alongside Miley Cyrus, Jesse McCartney, and Raven-Symoné, they were so close to being Disney's flagship boy band. But right before B5 could take off, they were held back. From Diddy sabotaging their Disney deal to the Jonas Brothers swooping right in and taking their spot, B5 was left with no publishing and a sabotaged second album. They faded into obscurity, and despite multiple comebacks, they never quit. But what really happened to B5? Perhaps not taking off was protection. Protection from the industry forces that be. Let's talk. Hey guys, it's your girl Cameron, and I'm back at it again with another video. And today, y'all already know, we are going to be talking about what happened to B5. Yes, we're diving into another group. This one has been highly requested for a minute now, and this one is for the millennials out there. If you know, you know. This is a very interesting, complex story. So we will be getting into it all today, from their early beginnings to career start, signing to Bad Boy, their many hiatuses, and where they are today. So comment down below, what are your thoughts on today's video? And make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below, as well as turning on your post notifications. And without further ado, let's get right into the story. Let's go. So we're gonna start with their early beginnings. B5 was made up of, yes, 5 brothers, the Breeding Brothers. That's their last name, by the way. They're all pretty close in age, with the birth year gap spanning from 1987 to 1993. Same parents, by the way, except for one of the group members, and we will talk about that. So let's go through the group lineup. Y'all got to get this down flat. So first, we have the eldest, Dustin, who was born October 8th, 1987.
I'm Dustin, I'm 16.
Then you got Kelly, who was born February 27th, 1989.
I'm Kelly, I'm 15. I'm a Pisces.
Patrick, born September 1990.
I'm Patrick and I'm 14 and I'm a Virgo.
And then we have Carnell, who was born November 1991.
I'm Carnell, I'm 13.
Now with Carnell, from what I understand, he is related to all of the brothers by blood. He has disclosed, however, that his biological mom passed away when he was really young, and her life was actually taken due to domestic violence, and his dad was gone.
Dad, but personally, wasn't really involved like that.
You have a different dad? You don't look like it though.
So his aunt, their mother, took Carnell in at a young age, and he was raised as a sibling. So Carnell has confirmed that he was not technically or legally adopted. He was just raised by them, and that was his choice to not be adopted because they were already family. But this was something that was confusing for fans at first because it wasn't disclosed outright. And then for the youngest, you have Brian, who was born October 14th, 1993.
I'm Brian, I'm 10 years old. I'm 10 years old.
What's your sign, Brian? What's your sign?
I'm a zebra.
Libra.
So, simplified overview, we have Dustin, Kelly, Patrick, Carnell, and Brian. Now, the group originated in St. Petersburg, Florida, but some of the boys were born in Kansas, with Carnell being born in Connecticut. They later moved to Florida and then moved to Atlanta, where they settled. They're half black and half white. Their father, however, wasn't part of this equation. It looks like their parents split at a very young age, and they were really raised by their mom and aunts. Now, they actually did not start off as B5 originally. They were called the TNT Boys starting in 1998.
Hi, my name is Dustin. My name is Carnell. I'm Kelly. I'm one of the members of the group This and That. I'm Patrick, and I'm one of the members of the group This and That.
They got a very young start, with the eldest only being 11 years old at the time. A key detail here is the youngest Brian was not a part of the TNT Boys. He was literally like 4 years old at the time. It didn't make any sense. But the eldest, Dustin, and the third oldest, Patrick, were the lead singers. And quiet as kept, they started off as a dance group and then it evolved into singing. And their mom and aunt encouraged them to take it far and develop the full package. It started off as wanting to keep the boys occupied and out of the streets, keep them out of trouble. Boy bands were particularly popular and they all bonded over their love of music and dance. Now, very early on, they landed their music manager, Jim McMahon, when they were the TNT Boys and were a part of his company, Jam Entertainment. So he was Tampa-based and was the one who saw their potential very early on, putting them in more positions to perform locally. And when they later moved to ATL, that's when they took the music even more seriously, doing showcases and the coveted school tours. It was the 90s, soon going into the new millennium, and boy bands were in. However, there weren't a lot of kiddie groups and black ones at that, so they were trying to get ahead of the curve. They entered competitions and planted their first seed with Disney, doing some Radio Disney talent shows. They changed their name around 2001 to B5, and the youngest, Brian, was added to the group. It was actually their manager, Jim's suggestion that they add Brian. He could keep up. Yes, he was very, very young, but he added a certain charm to the group. At this time, the brothers were traveling, doing showcases for A&Rs and record execs like Tommy Mottola and Motown Records, and the rest was history. They were now B5. Now, the name B5 is clearly inspired by the simplicity of the Jackson 5. Last name, insert number of group members. So B5, as we know it, was birthed in 2001. So let's talk about the quick-ish takeoff. Usually it takes a very long time for groups to plant their feet, but they had the look, they had the routines, and were quite polished. I also want to add the nuance that groups tend to work better, ironically tend to work better when they're family. Might not always be great for the family structure, but they tend to work better. They're all locked in. They're all living under the same roof. Now, while the boys weren't the strongest singers yet, they were literally babies, they had promising vocal arrangements for a young age. Being brothers alone was enough to catch the attention of record labels, as there were not a lot of family groups anymore. This was not the days of the Osmonds and the Jacksons. Like, it was not giving that. And their sound was often described by music journalists as a mix and fusion between Jackson 5 and New Edition. Now, one of their producers, pre-fame, was connected and introduced them to a lot of industry players, like L.A. Reid, Jermaine Dupri, and I already know the class is about to sigh. Diddy. Yes, they were introduced to Diddy through this producer. Now, this itself can give you all the insight as to how their career was about to go and how it was going to end up, but we have to put it into the context of the time. It was the early 2000s. Bad Boy Entertainment was very much relevant, and Diddy was constantly reinventing and destiny swapping upwards to grow his brand bigger and bigger. This was also around the time that making the band was about to begin. So he was about to really become this mogul. So they got a meeting with Diddy, performed for him, and basically on the spot, he signed them.
Yeah, so we went out there and met him while he was at a hotel.
Hit play, did our thing, and you know, Puff was sitting in the robe, you know, what he had, some chicken wings? Nah,
bro. You know what I mean? And then after that, he was like, I think he said something along the lines like, yo, man, welcome to Bad Boy.
So y'all heard instantly in the room?
Yeah.
And they didn't ask any questions. The rest was history. And we will go into more depth within the scandal section about their business relationship. I'm sure a lot of you guys are curious what their perspective is on that, but we will get there, okay? Because we already know wherever Diddy resides, there is going to be some sort of shady business practice, somebody getting screwed over. We will talk about that. And they technically signed to Bad Boy Entertainment in 2001. It took several years, explicitly four, for their debut single to release. Probably because making the band was happening, Diddy was very preoccupied. And this was also during the days of artist development. So B5 was put to work. Vocal lessons, dance rehearsals, studio sessions. and also practicing on their own time. So it took a minute to get them where they needed to be. But eventually Diddy did get into the studio and began producing B5's debut album, self-titled, with other heavy-hitting producers like Rodney Jerkins, Ryan Leslie, and Sean Garrett. Now, their debut single, All I Do, released in 2005 ahead of their debut album, which, yes, is a cover of the Jackson 5's 1975 song. Now, my guess is a lot of little girls at the time did not know that this was a cover. We are talking about Bad Boy Entertainment, and we know Diddy samples. Like, that's what he did. Although Rodney Jerkins was actually the one who recommended they do the cover, and they cut the cover. And I do have a slight bone to pick with this. Granted, I was really young when they came out. I wasn't really aware of what was going on, but I am very familiar with the original version of the song, as well as Troop's 1989 version of the song, which is a masterful remake. So for me, hearing this, I'm like, why would you set these kids up like that? Why would you set them up like that? But because their audience didn't really have knowledge of the fact that it was a cover like that, it worked. It worked. And then you added the 2000s production. It was kind of fun to see the evolution of the song from a 70s lens, from an 80s lens, to now an early 2000s lens. It was a fairly successful introduction. It charted at number 71 on the Hot R&B Hip Hop Songs chart. The girls went crazy. The music video went up. But these kiddos, as B5, bar for bar, were covering a song by Jackson 5. That's a lot to live up to. And for your biggest song to be one that was a cover of the greatest boy group of all time, like, I don't know. But I will say, the music video did wonders, all right? The music video was played on loop via 106 in Park, where young audiences were cued into who was next up. And B5 was a part of that conversation. Like, the servers, fans were breaking the servers so that this music video could place and get top 1. They never got to top 1. They never got that top spot, but they made it up to number 2. Young girls responded to them extremely well at the time. This group was targeted towards middle school age girls, maybe young high school, but specifically young Black girls. And the boys were all different ages, so they could also hit a couple of age brackets while they were at it. And one comment in the YouTube section reads, "Who knew the world could handle 5 light skins at the same time?" Yeah, that was a huge part of this shit. Not even gonna lie. The youngest, Brian, had a very strong vocal presence on the track, carrying a lot of those high notes, while Patrick really took the lead vocal, and the others either rapped, took the speaking part.
I've been seeing you from across the room.
And this was where their brand was starting to come together, from their style, the presentation, and choreography. Speaking of choreography, they released another single called You Got Me, and although it didn't chart, it was extremely impressive, especially to fans at the time. Like, they were dancing, doing front flips and shit. They walked so mindless behavior could run, okay? Run into a wall, but run. And what's so funny to me about this video, Brian, the youngest one, is so cute. He is so cute, and he is honestly phenomenal. Like, the way he was able to keep up with his older brothers is not to be minimized. But there were a couple cuts in this music video where he was on the wrong step. He wasn't doing it, and you could tell they were just like, F it. Like, there's 5 brothers. We're not all gonna get it right. Like, we're just gonna leave it. And before we move into the next section, I would like to thank today's sponsor, Uber Eats. Let's hit it. Now, after I finish filming this video, I have a lot of editing to get to. Sometimes I get so wrapped up in the editing process that I forget to eat. And then I hear my stomach growl and I'm like, I should probably go do that. And in these cases, it's often convenient for me to order food, get it delivered to my door so I can eat right away. And this is where today's sponsor, Uber Eats, comes into the picture. On the Uber Eats app, you can order food in just a few taps. With access to hundreds of restaurants, I ask myself, am I in the mood for Thai, Indian cuisine, Japanese food, Mexican food? There are so many options that can be found on Uber Eats. You can also discover new deals every day. Best believe I go straight to the offers section. And being that I live in an up and coming area, a lot of businesses are coming to the area, new restaurants. I love supporting local businesses, local spots. And Uber Eats outlines a lot of great new places, or you can of course order your good and faithful. Track your order in the app, pick your drop-off preference. I personally like my food to be left at my door. Me and Uber Eats go way back. When I was in college, living on campus, I didn't have my car. And I lived in the city, so I used to use Uber Eats with whatever money I did have. So we go way back. Discover new deals every day and order from hundreds of restaurants on Uber Eats. So head to the link in the description or use my QR code over here and use code Cameron15 to get $15 off of your first order with a minimum basket size of $20. I will be ordering some food once I turn this camera off and once this video's done. Thank you so much to Uber Eats for sponsoring today's video, and let's get right back into the story. So let's talk about the debut album. So their debut self-titled album, B5, released July 19th, 2005 under Bad Boy Records. The album debuted at number 19 on the Billboard 200 and peaked at number 7 on the top R&B and hip-hop albums chart. Listening to this album for the first time, back in front, in preparation for this video, I didn't have huge gripes. I thought it was a pretty solid debut, and I could absolutely see why young girls like them. Decent music, and they were adorable. They had great choreography. They were very tight, and they had a good image going. Really emulating the popular sound of 2000s R&B hip-hop meshed together. From songs like So Pretty to Dance For You to Back in Your Arms, there was one song in particular that made me clutch my pearls. Their song Teacher's Pet. I have questions. Limits were absolutely pushed in the early 2000s, and I want to make that very clear. I understand the time and the context. We've all had the classmate who had a little crush on the substitute, the teacher, all right? That happens. But Teacher's Pet took this concept to another level, and I was uncomfortable. Like, what you mean we could keep it on the low? Girl, nobody has to know. What you mean anything you want to do, I'm not afraid to try that with you? What you mean my feelings are out of control? I've been a bad boy. I don't like that double entendre. I don't like it. And the youngest was 11 years old at this point. What you mean made that Coca-Cola shape, made me want to get a taste? Whoever wrote this for children, jail. Jail. Jokingly, but maybe not. Because what are we talking about? I was a little taken aback by that, I'm not gonna lie. But overall, I think the album was pretty well written. The production was pretty good. It was on trend for the time. Now, with their song, You Don't Know What You Do to Me, as adults, B5 revealed that at this time, they hated this song. So much so that they tried to ruin it on purpose when recording it. I really don't blame them though. They had little to no control over what they were able to record, what they were able to do.
A lot of times we were dragged to the studio. Yeah. Didn't like a record, but it's
had to do it
anyway.
Had to cut it anyway.
So it's out of our hands.
So that added an even extra layer of feeling like they really couldn't say anything. Another group flaw, unless if it was the youngest singing or maybe Patrick singing or Kelly rapping, I didn't know whose voice was who for real. Like, there wasn't, to me, a strong vocal identity. And I know a lot of you guys may push back at that and say, well, if you listened, this is as an outsider and listening to their projects back to front to back. I don't even think at one point I could ever confidently say this person is singing. So I would have loved to hear a little more vocal variety within their vocal arrangements. Now, they'd go on to participate in the Scream 4 tour, sponsored by BET, performing alongside Bow Wow, Omarion, Marcus Houston, Pretty Ricky, and Bobby V. Remember, the Scream tour was all of the rave. It was a phenomenon. And for Black teens, Black youth, Black artists, to make that tour meant you were popping. And B5 would become a part of that legacy. They were touring, on the road, really trying to work the first album. So let's talk about Disney. This is a very important piece to the puzzle because this is where all their potential was possibly heading. And Disney is no joke. You guys know so many artists and actors from that time went on to blow up, and they are still relevant till this day. And B5, in some alternate universe, B5 could have been a part of that story. So around this time, B5 was doing something right. Because around 2004 to 2005, Disney was calling. All right. Their manager, Jim, helped facilitate this connection. And although they never got signed to an exclusive deal with Disney, that was initially the end goal. Why wouldn't it be? They entered more of a media partnership, however. This boosted their exposure. They were featured on a lot of Disney programming at the time. Music videos were playing nonstop on their platform. They were booked for Radio Disney performances. Multiple of their songs from their debut album were charting on the Radio Disney charts at the same time. And they were very much becoming integrated with the Disney kids. Like in 2006, they did multiple performances alongside Ally and AJ, as well as the Jonas Brothers. They also co-headline other shows like Radio Disney Live with Miley Cyrus, Jesse McCartney, and the Cheetah Girls. At some point, all there was to do was to take the next step. Because at this time, Disney was really trying to develop more musical acts. They wanted kids who were triple threats. And for them, they felt like B5 could have been a part of that. Disney viewed B5 as this family-friendly R&B hip-hop act. And they also had this pop appeal as well. Now, it was revealed by B5 years and years later that they were in talks of developing a show, a scripted TV series with Disney Channel. They were in meetings, they were a part of that collaborative process, but the opportunity fell through. And this is one of their greatest sore spots.
We weren't signed to Hollywood Records, but yet our songs were like dominating the charts on Radio Disney. So of course we just continued that relationship and that collaboration.
They also wanted to give us a show too, but
they wanted to give y'all a show.
Yeah, they had a show idea locked in for us, but Bad Boy kind of shut it down.
The boys revealed why the Disney deal ultimately fell through. And guess who was at the center of it? Guess who was the reason? Yeah, I'm sure you guys did it. I feel like Dora right now.
If you see Swiper, yell Swiper!
Class, tell me, who did it? Yes, Diddy. Diddy, of course. Now keep in mind, they were signed to Bad Boy. At the time, most Disney artists and actors would sign to Hollywood Records, and that was Disney Music's subsidiary. Now, according to B5, Disney wanted to take the next step and sign the boys to a record deal. But we already know they were in a contract with Bad Boy Records, so that was going to be a conflict. So what happened? They had to go to Diddy and say, hey, what would it take to be able to get the boys to sign with us? Well, Diddy wanted money. He wanted a huge payout so that B5 could go to Disney. And Disney was like, we're not going to pay you all that money, because with all the money we'd be paying you, we could be putting that into our own artist. So they were like, that's not going to work. And in May 2025, B5 revealed that truth with them saying, quote, Puffy wanted a certain amount of dollars for that, which Hollywood Records was like, that's a big check. We can actually use that over here.
The thing was, we couldn't be signed to Bad Boy no more. We would have to sign to Hollywood. In order to sign to Hollywood, Puff wanted a certain amount of dollars for that, which Hollywood wasn't like, hey, we can't. Shut it down. That's a big check.
Just money hungry and greedy per usual. Diddy really thought that he would outsmart Disney. He really thought and so guess what happened? Disney said, never mind. We'll just move on to the next thing. And that next thing was the Jonas Brothers. And to make it clear, the Jonas Brothers were working with Disney at the time. They signed to Hollywood Records in 2005. So they already had a working relationship. I think the resources they were going to put into B5, they were able to just really redirect and put all of it back into the Jonas Brothers. And that really worked out for them. B5 even revealed at that time, fans were starting to get frustrated because they felt like Bad Boy was not doing everything they could for the boys. So in New York City, there were fans picketing outside of Bad Boy offices because of deals like this being squandered. And they went as far to say that the show that B5 was starting to develop with Disney and they were in the talks of was given to another group, aka the Jonas Brothers. You know, they had their own show. We know how their careers would catapult. B5 was in talks to be Disney's flagship boy band. Basically what the Jonas Brothers would end up being. Now, I don't know. I think the Jonas Brothers, if we want to talk about it, you know, it's harder. Disney has not always done a very good job marketing Black teens on their platforms as far as their music careers. B5, I don't know if that would have gone any different, to be honest. So I can't even sit there and say that like they would have been as big as the Jonas Brothers. Who knows? But it's just interesting to see that that was kind of their counterpart. Well, that their life could have looked somewhat similar to that in some alternate universe. Now, B5 would still have an everlasting link to one of Disney's biggest musical movies of all time, High School Musical, which actually hit its 20 year. It's been 20 years. Like I'm feeling old, y'all. I'm starting to feel a little old. But they were a part of the High School Musical soundtrack. In the first movie, Troy or Drew Seeley's hit song, and Scene, Get Your Head in the Game, was actually re-recorded by B5 as a hip-hop version for the High School Musical soundtrack. It also featured an extra rap verse from Kelly, and it was actually written by Kelly. And they didn't get credit for that, of course. And this song was released in 2006. There were actually many fans who argued that their version was better than the movie version. And the song in their music video would play constantly on Disney Channel. They did a couple other songs and covers for Disney shows like Hannah Montana soundtrack, That's So Raven soundtrack, and Disney Mania. And for their sake, I wish it would have worked out for them in the Disney sense. You know, that's also a toss-up because a lot of the Disney kids went through a lot of hardships and growing up. But Disney does provide more structure versus them being at Bad Boy. Bad Boy discarded their artist often. So in some world, I really do wish that would have worked out or they would have been able to take that further. But things happen sometimes the way that they're supposed to. And I will say this, the youngest Brian at some point was doing some hosting work for Cartoon Network. So it goes to show you their commercial potential was there. They were trying to build a true expansive brand, but that was honestly cut short. That was cut before they were able to really get there. Now let's move on to their next era, the second album. The beginning of the end, honestly. Now behind the scenes, things at Bad Boy were shifting. Their second album, Don't Talk, Just Listen, was released September 11th, 2007. Now for reference, the eldest was now about 20 years old and the youngest was around 12 or 13, okay? So we're starting to get a significant age gap. Dustin is starting to look like the Jackie Jackson of the group, but nevertheless, they're brothers, they gonna stick beside each other. Now, how do we let these guys grow up while still keeping it age appropriate for the youngest? That was beginning hard. It was hard to do. If you listen to some of the music on the album, they were trying to get a little more explicit, just a little bit. Also, the first album had a completely different team than the second album. And so if you work behind the scenes, if you know the music industry, that can make a huge difference. And it did. Not for the better. And also, between their first and second album, Bad Boy was transitioning from Universal to Atlantic Records, I believe. These factors made things more chaotic behind the scenes from a business perspective, not giving B5 the best launch pad for their second album. Now, this album only had one single, and it was Hydraulic featuring Bow Wow. And the album did debut at number 27 on the Billboard 200, so that was a dip from the first album, but it did see a slight chart improvement on the top R&B hip-hop albums chart, reaching number 5. Unfortunately, this album was dropped the same exact day as 50 Cent's Curtis album and Kanye West's Graduation album, both of their third albums. And they were beefing. I don't know if you guys remember this, but they did a whole media tour beefing about who was going to sell the most records. 50 and Kanye went on 106 in Park, and it was a huge thing. This was huge. We look back at this moment, and this absolutely shifted hip-hop culture. So nobody gave a about B5 dropping their second album. And they knew this. They were like, our team dropped the ball. Granted, I'm sure Bad Boy was already prepping. It's like, we don't want to switch everything. But at this point, we could have waited a week. We could have waited maybe 2 weeks. And that absolutely buried their album. Nobody cared. Except for some little girls, which is cool. But nobody cared. They didn't. And so in hindsight, B5 has cited that in interviews as being one of the biggest downfalls of their second album was the release date alone. Now, sonically, their project featured tons of drums. It was very high energy, very trendy. A few slow moments, a few ballady moments to mature it up. But this album, they work with producers like Brian Michael Cox, Mario Winans, Soul Diggers, and The Underdogs, just to name a few. So still some heavy hitters. Now, I would have loved to hear some stronger vocals here, a bit more vocal maturity, because to me, they all kind of sounded the same. And I would have loved to hear the bass in someone's voice when it came to harmonizing. Actually, in her review, vibe critic Julian Shepard commented on this exactly, saying, quote, "The writing is often super cannily, masking the boys' sometimes too thin voices. I think thin is a good way to express it. It's a group. I would have loved to hear a bit more vocal variety and depth in some of their voices, right? Because it all sounded so light. Like, it all sounded so up here sometimes. However, I do think that they had some highlights on this album. Like, I really liked Erica Kane, and she got that. I thought it was a pretty good album. I enjoyed a lot of the production choices on the project. I really don't have a lot bad to say about their music itself. It wasn't anything super extraordinary. I see why little girls like them. I don't really have a lot to say from the music front. I really don't. They were kids. That was their last album on Bad Boy, as the relationship had soured. But they didn't actually get dropped from the label. They left. They left in 2009, and things stalled for a few years.
We left Bad Boy in 2009. Our first album, once it came out, we toured off it for like 2 years.
Yeah, it wasn't a fast decline.
No,
y'all still was doing
fire records, bro, off the second album. And once we came out with Hydraulics with Bow Wow, the label was like, bro, we're finna shut it down.
Yeah.
We're finna shut the album down. We're finna go back in the studio.
We want y'all to go back in the studio.
We actually got pushed back because, I don't know if you guys remember when New Edition got signed to Bad Boy. And they came out with Hot Tonight.
Hot Tonight.
That pushed our stuff back. It was like, bro, we can't go back into the dark and after one record like it's gonna kill the momentum.
Diddy did not care about their group, and that became very obvious, and we will talk about that. And around 2010 they changed their group name to Audio. Yeah, I don't know why, but they did. What in the punk rebrand was going on? And they saw little success. I'm assuming their fans were confused and didn't get it. I would have rode that B5 name till the wheels fell off. So what did they do? They went back to their original name. But the group went on a long hiatus. And we will talk about that. But what really happened to B5? We have made it. We have made it to the scandal section. Before we get into the Diddy of it all, I do want to talk about one defining event. Okay, one defining event early on in their career that kind of signaled like, wow, their fans were diehards, all right? We got to talk about the riot. So on November 12th, 2005, they performed on Radio Disney's Jingle Jam Tour, a show sponsored by the local Radio Disney station in Minnesota, and they performed at the Brookdale Mall. Now, they could hardly get to song number 2 when young girls rushed the stage, and it led to outright chaos. It led to a riot.
It was something out of the days of Elvis and the Beatles, scores of teenage girls fainting at the sight of their favorite band, but then things started to escalate, and eventually it got out of hand.
Now, mall shows were all the rave back then, and oftentimes was the only free way fans could see and get access to their favorite artist. And at this show, there were about 2,000 fans in attendance, and it evolved into dangerous chaos. You can see in the video that the security guards were already struggling to control the crowd. Like, I don't know where they hired these people. They weren't doing nothing. Like, they really could not do anything to control this crowd. Girls broke the barricade, rushed the stage, and trampled on one another to get to B5. Things were falling off the stage, girls were falling off the stage, and girls started fighting. Yes, physical fist fights. Girls were fighting, parents were fighting.
It was insane. People were getting hurt, punched, thrown around.
They were squaring up. You could literally see it in the clip. These poor boys were terrified. All right, you can literally see it in Dustin's face. They left with ripped t-shirts, shoes, earrings. The stage was coming down. It was horrifying. And witnesses detailed seeing the boys running, security trying to escort the boys off stage to protect them. Now, the aftermath, 9 people were treated for minor injuries, with 4 of them getting treated at the hospital. Now, the mall actually had to be completely cleared out that day. And then they did end up opening up the mall later that night. So they did have to evacuate the entire building. And the pandemonium and obsession that little girls had with boy bands was quite dangerous and could be grave. And I think this incident reported why. As much as I think little girls should be able to enjoy their favorite artists, specifically their favorite boy bands, and shouldn't be shamed for it, we cannot minimize the parasocial, the dangerous parasocial behavior that occurs sometimes because of it. Like, it's not okay. It's not okay. Sadly, I wouldn't be surprised, though, if the label saw this as a we made it moment. Because a lot of the times with boy bands, they're expected to just deal with that behavior. Girls kissing them randomly on the cheek, ripping their shirts off. It's not acceptable behavior, but that was kind of expected. That was the goal, for the girls to be so enamored with you that they went crazy. And unsurprisingly, in a post interview, the boys kind of laughed it off almost in hindsight. And what with the whole "the girls love me" bit.
It's crazy, like they're like kissing me to death. I'm almost passed out. Like I couldn't breathe because there's so many like closed in on me.
You know, like the girls love me, the ladies love me. But I know it was terrifying in that moment. I know they had to have been shaken up by it. And as scary as that was, it really shows you how B5 very early on was able to establish a die-hard fan base. Like, it was insane. Now, for the bulk of the scandals section, we have to talk about Diddy and the publishing debacle. We have to talk about their working relationship with Diddy. So we know that Diddy signed the boys to Bad Boy when they were all under the age of 18 around 2001. Now, B5 thought they had struck gold. Why not? Bad Boy was popping. It was the making the band era. Like, what was there to not sign to? Granted, I know in hindsight with all the information that we have, it does seem crazy. So to preface, we know Diddy, all of these years later, would go on trial in May 2025, facing charges including sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy, being convicted on 2 counts of transportation for prostitution, where he is currently serving his sentence. All right, fast forward all of these years, we know this is where Diddy would end up. But all of these allegations coming up over the years had many fans going down a rabbit hole, going down Diddy's former roster of former artists, wondering and accounting for how nearly every single one of them had been crossed by the mogul at one point. And so B5 was in that conversation. Everybody's going down the docket, the Rolodex. They going down the Rolodex of artists talking about, what happened with B5 though? Because come to think of it, their career just went down the gutter. It went down the shitter, it went down the drain. So there's actually a clip of B5 on 106 in Park, and Diddy, for once, showed up for them. Like, for once, for twice, showed up for them. But people interpreted this clip as the boys, no one wanting to sit next to Diddy. Like, there being some uncomfortability. I don't know how much of this was fans reading into it all of these years later. Take a look at the clip for yourself. But people were starting to speculate. They have maintained that they actually did not interact with Diddy that much, but rather interacted with his Bad Boy team member. In later interviews, B5 has pointed out that it was difficult being signed to Diddy. Despite Diddy being the record executive, he wanted to be the #1 artist on his own label. And he made that very clear. He used his artists as stepping stones, period. They were always secondary. Dustin did reveal that Diddy was neglectful to the group, which did create some sort of behind the scenes tension. It was underlying, very underlying, but it was there. They claimed that he did not come to not one of their shows, except for a couple of 106 in Park appearances. So outside of like All I Do, after that, he kind of like pushed the group to the side. He could give a damn about what B5 was doing. They have maintained that they were only around him in a business sense, if they ever were, even though they really weren't like that, and that they never saw anything. They did say that the closest personal relationship they got is like they were cool with his kids, they were cool with Quincy. That's really only how personal it got. I will say this, based off of later interviews and the fans' reaction to it in the comments, some spectators have noticed that their body language shifts a little bit when Diddy is brought up. I am no body language expert, and I'm not going to pretend to be, so I'm not going to speculate on that. I really hope nothing happened to them. Diddy being locked up and the trial, they have been very vocal about that. Like, good. Like, lock the man up. Like, What's done in the dark should come to light. They're not Diddy supporters.
I support Cass.
Yeah,
for sure.
100%.
You know, any corruption that's happening in the industry should be expunged.
Okay, so they don't condone anything that he's done, none of that. They're just saying from their experience, he ain't really do nothing to us. Except, Patrick did recall a chilling phone call that Diddy had with him when Patrick was about 14 years old. Patrick said it was around the time they were working on their second single, You Got Me, and were making adjustments to the choreography because, you know, they were going to make the music video. And that's when Diddy allegedly said he didn't like certain movements. He didn't like some of the moves and wanted them to make some changes to the choreography. He later wanted to speak to Patrick on the phone to confirm that they made those changes. He spoke to Diddy and said, quote, "Yeah, we made the changes. It looks great. I feel like everything is pretty much good to go." And this is when Patrick alleged that Diddy switched out of nowhere and raised his voice, saying, quote,
raising his voice like, "No, it ain't better." I'm just like, "You asked me though, and I'm telling you that it is, like, it's dope." But he just went off on a little, so I was like, okay, yeah, I give it back to management. I was like 14.
And it may seem small to some, but Patrick noted that it was startling. Like, he was startled by it because they hadn't experienced that aggression from Diddy like that yet. And y'all seen Diddy on the phone cussing people out. You guys know it's like kind of a notorious thing that he kind of flips a switch all of a sudden. And Patrick said he witnessed that. And it was very scary because he's like, why are you talking to a kid like this? Like, I'm a kid. And Dustin did confirm he overheard this phone call and he was taken aback by this as well.
I guess I said something to my mom, or I don't know what it was. I can't remember quite clearly, but I know he got on the phone and he was yelling at me about something me and my mom were talking about, which I don't even know how he even got the information. He got me on the phone and was like, "Yo, Playboy, blah, blah, blah." You know what I mean? I was like to Patrick, I was just taken back a little bit, like, where's this animosity coming from?
Now, we know they left Bad Boy in 2009. I'm sure for years they were very down about how their career completely just not even spiraled. It just completely ceased to exist. I'm sure that was something they lived with and they pondered for years.
We're talking almost 10 years of being like, what the fuck? Like, this has psychologically made me be like, why did things turn out the way they did?
But when Diddy's allegations were bubbling to the surface, they all expressed protection. On their Instagram stories, they came out and, you know, they expressed like feeling this clarity. Like, maybe my career didn't work out. Maybe this just didn't go the way we wanted it to shield them potentially from the darkness surrounding Diddy and the industry very specifically. Things could have gotten extremely dark for them. And so I think that has provided clarity that, you know, as children, maybe they were being protected by things not working out. In September 2023, outlets did report that Diddy was returning publishing rights back to previous Bad Boy artists and songwriters. And artists outlined in this deal were Biggie's estate, Faith Evans, Mace, The Lox, and 112, as well as, quote, many more unspecified creators. So it was presented by Diddy as this noble thing to do. We all know he's calculated, allegedly turning down a 9-figure deal to give the rights back to these certain artists. This was when he was putting out that solo album. He was also getting the Global Icon Award at the VMAs and rebranding as Love. I think he knew a storm was brewing in the background, and he wanted some good PR before the shoe was going to drop. I think that's exactly why he did that. But to the public, he made it seem like it was out of the kindness of his heart. So in a podcast, B5 was asked directly if they were given back their publishing rights, because it wasn't specified who all was given the publishing rights back. And they said no, they were not. Quote, "We weren't in those conversations."
Was in the news for its decision to return publishing rights to Bad Boy artists. Did B5 benefit from that?
That's a discussion. We didn't hear anything. We didn't get no calls or nothing like that from that. But
with a camera, yeah. Puff, Diddy,
yeah.
We want our publishing too.
Now, come to find out, like most Bad Boy artists, they didn't own a damn thing from their time at the label. Kids who worked hard, contributed to the creative process and the choreography, because they have disclosed that they did write, that they were hands-on. Dustin even said, "We didn't get a lot of credit." Now, would they get publishing for their most popular song, All I Do? Probably not. That was a remake of a remake. But there are credits. They were credited in the second album for writing. But it looks like they did not get paid any level of publishing at all when it came to what they did contribute. On Joe Budden's podcast, he picked up this news and he basically mocked B5. He was like,
"Hey, B5, y'all shut the up. Y'all ain't never getting no publishing back. Joe Budden said that B5 wasn't going to be a part of no publishing. Go ahead. They y'all deserve no publishing. Oh, shit. No. Come on, man. Listen, people that deserve some publishing got a little bit of it.
He was mocking them and laughing at them, which I thought was a very interesting reaction. Like, what did these kids ever do to you? Like, why are you getting so hot and heated about them possibly wanting some publishing? It was just weird. They weren't clout chasing. They were asked about it. It was relevant news. They were allowed to speak about their former label and their former boss. Like, I don't know. That was just weird on Joe Budden's part. Now, Dustin actually responded to this in a video he posted to Instagram. He was not having it.
Joe Budden, you told me and my brother to shut the up when you the one that needs to shut the up. Do some research before you start coming and talking ill on me and my brother's name. I don't expect you to know what records we've done or how many records we put out. I don't expect you to know we put out two certified albums through Bad Boy. I don't expect you to know how many multiple millions of records we done did for Disney. So millions of records. I don't expect you to know what we done for Motown. And I don't expect you, and it don't bother me, bro, because you're not supposed to know. You're older, bro. You way older than me and my brothers, bro. So we don't expect you to know it. We was for the girls and the people of our age group.
So this kind of spawned into a little drama, just a little bit. But as for the money conversation, in a 2024 Tasha K interview, they clarified that they did not get paid from not one record sale. Not one. That all of their money came from touring and merchandising, which is very common with a lot of these very botched record deals and was very common in the 90s and early 2000s, like 360 deals, basically. So being a Bad Boy signee was damn near a curse. Almost every single artist signed to that label never got their just due or had a tragic ending. Because from my understanding, guys, this is it for the scandals. They didn't really have that many compared to their contemporaries at the time. They're all still family. They didn't have a lot of like crazy falling outs, nothing. So in a way, was it the worst thing that it didn't go well? Probably not. Now let's talk about the kinda comeback. The stop and start, start and stop. Fair warning, their career was very spotty and inconsistent after their 2007 album, and they left Diddy's label in 2009. We know they switched their group name to Audio in 2010, but changed it back when it saw no success. What in the mom this isn't a phase is going on here? Like, I don't know if they were trying to do some sort of punk rebrand. You guys could see the hair was flat ironed. I don't know. Years passed, the fans had grown up. There was a huge lack of consistency. They actually did a soft launch back into the industry with their 2012 song Cookie. And what the is this?
Cookie, best cookie, Aquafina wet cookie. Got that juicy fruity, big old double bubble booty.
What was this? You know what? Anyways. And in May 2013, they did their official comeback with their song Say Yes. It was their first official single release since 2007. They were now signed with Motown Records. And honestly, like, this music video went up. It had 12 million views. Fans were in on it. They loved it. People were like, oh yes, B5 is back. Like, the song was pretty solid. I think this was, if they were gonna ever make a true comeback, I think 2013 was the year they had to strike. But it didn't go that way. They went into another hiatus. I will say though, in 2013, they opened for the Backstreet Boys 20th anniversary concert. Keep in mind, the Backstreet Boys had been supporting B5 since back in the day. Like, B5 was opening for them. So it was nice to see that come into fruition again. But they went mute after their 2013 single. And then, surprise, B5 released another comeback single in July 2018 called Do That. You don't get that all the time, them girl be killing my vibe. And they were grown men at this point, so it was definitely more explicit and mature. They released another record called Wave in 2019, alongside with a music video, and then they proceeded to do a few concerts together. Speaking of concerts, there were some fans wondering why B5 wasn't included on the Millennium Tour. Correction, they did like one show back in 2019, but they were asked why they weren't in the 2025 show.
Why weren't we on the Millennium Tour? Don't really know. Kind of over it. Personally feel the reason why is because there's some things going on behind the scenes or some sort of disconnect. And I think everybody kind of is feeling and saying the same thing, like, where is B5, are they on there? But we personally can't answer that question because we don't fully know what's going on, behind the scenes.
In an interview, claimed that it was low-key their idea.
Talk about it. Raz B came over to the spot. At Carnell's apartment. Patrick was like, yo, we got the dopest idea for this tour. I got an idea. Like, we need to get B5, B2K, Pretty Ricky, Mario, get all the greats from the Scream tours and do like a
that was our generation.
Like Scream Millennium Tour type vibe. Yeah. I was like, I go, I promise you, bro, the check is out there. Like, we just have to put it together.
He said he got
it's a genius idea. I got goosebumps, bro. Like, you know what I mean? He's like, I'm gonna go figure it out. And then that's how that whole Millennium Tour in 2019 actually happened.
So you actually
and then we get left out though, and we get left out. So we're the only ones that didn't get on it.
They did get a decent amount of backlash for this because a lot of people were like, a lot of us do not even remember y'all, and at best you have like 1 or 2 songs that did anything. So that was like a little side drama, a little side scandal, but nevertheless not the biggest deal. But the inconsistency crippled them. They had some good comeback songs, and every time they came back, they made sure to translate whatever song they were doing with the trend of the time. You will see that as we move forward. It was a single every couple of years where they seemed really dedicated, good money being thrown into the budget, throw money at a music video, and retreat, disappear all over again. But I do want to get a little bit into what was going on in their personal lives at this time, because you have to remember, life happens. They're adulting, they're starting families, we'll talk about it. So I do want to provide a little update before we get into their present day. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about Carnell. Throughout this time, Carnell got married to his wife, whom he had been with for 15 plus years. She'd been around for a very long time, and he had 2 children, with his eldest being born, I believe, around 2014. And he's also released some solo records under the name Carnell in 2020 and 2021. Stayed pretty low-key while doing stuff in the group. Then you had Kelly. Kelly always seemed to be the quietest, the most reserved, and very low-key, but he also pursued a solo music career and some ventures outside of the group under the fitting solo name of Low Key Cal. All right, so he released like a couple little solo records, but didn't officially post them until 2025. Then you have Dustin. I think Dustin was probably the most active, like in the media, doing music out of all of the brothers. Dustin released a solo EP in 2015 with his lead single, Pay It Forward. And if we want to rewind it a few years prior, he had his first son and he became a father in 2013. In 2023, Dustin made headlines when he revealed that he had a new boo. And you might wonder, okay, why was this news? Well, this made multiple blog platforms because she's a trans woman named D Smith, who was on Love and Hip Hop for a period of time. So she had a following, she's a director, music producer, etc. So D Smith produced a documentary called Kokomo City. This documentary, she specifically focused on the story of a trans woman named Coco Dadal. All right, and Coco was murdered. She was killed for being a trans woman. So Dustin wanted to show his solidarity with D Smith publicly, saying, quote,
I feel that as men, black men, we're not allowing ourselves to love who we want to love openly without fearing being judged and shamed publicly, you know what I mean? So as we come into adulthood, I find that as men, we get frustrated that by what we're basically feeling in our hiding and take this frustration out on others. And, sometimes that emotional trauma can basically lead to violence or, death. Which brings me to why I'm doing this video. I'm in a very beautiful relationship with someone who makes me very happy. She's very sexy, very talented, and most of all, she has a beautiful kind of spirit, which I love. My girlfriend, she is transgender. Her name is D Smith. After Coco's death, basically, I wanted to make it very clear to her that she has a place that she can feel safe and free with, and, basically feel seen and loved without any condition. Well, I don't want to be one of those men benefiting from like a trans woman in private and, not celebrate her publicly.
He wanted to come out and say, look, I'm sharing with you guys, sharing with y'all. I don't care what y'all think. He made a whole video talking about it. Of course, there were people in the comments being grossly ignorant. Kudos to him speaking out about it, having a conversation that needs to be had even more. And he was in the media because of that. I think they're still dating till this day. As for Patrick, he has kept B5 as his passion project. That has clearly been his heart and soul, his grind, his hustle, with him only releasing 2 solo records, one called All Night and another called Wherever You Go, in 2021 and 2022. And lastly, you have the youngest, Brian. Brian actually had a son around 2019. So you guys can see probably why the start and stop kept happening, because they were all living their own lives. And over the years, he transitioned into a solo career while simultaneously being in the group. His first solo single was released in 2018. And in April 2025, he released an album called Platonic and did a little mini tour. It also looks like current day he is proceeding forward with a beta of an AI app. I don't know about that, but that is where all of them, or what they were all doing amidst the stop and start of their group career. Now, lastly, I want to get into where is the group now. They made another official return, yet again, in 2024 and dropped a single called Give It Back. It has this Afrobeats feel, it's really nice melodically. I was like, wait a minute, the dance moves were hitting. The song was actually pretty good. Again, they like to reflect the trendy sounds. I actually think they're decently well at taking a temperature check of what people are listening to and emulating that in the music. So they did a slew of shows throughout 2024. They also revealed that Jim is still their manager. That is almost unheard of, to have the same manager basically, 20 years later. But they also did announce that they were independent. They were writing and producing all of their own tracks and funding their own videos. But they really have put their foot on the gas in 2025. Starting on day 1, they released their 6-track EP called Still Think About You. So B5 continued releasing singles throughout 2025, reaching 20 years since their official debut. In respect to that, they embarked on a mini 20-year anniversary tour that began in July 2025, and they dropped their latest single called Drill in October 2025. And they've been doing a lot of interviews. There's actually a really, really good one with Ray Daniels. Check that out. The Disney training, the media training, it shines through. But they all seem to still have a really great bond. But I will say they haven't posted anything since October 2025, since their Drill single. So they probably are going into another hiatus, I'm assuming. I don't know. It's just an interesting evolution, an interesting story of a boy group, a boy band forgotten. I genuinely believe a group like this walked so mindless behavior could run. Let me know what you guys think. That was what happened to B5. There are so many other groups that I do want to get into. Be patient with me because groups take a lot of research time. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below to keep up with more videos like this. Turn on those post notifications. And thank you so much to Uber Eats for sponsoring today's video. Link is in the description. And without further ado, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.